Hello everyone and welcome to week 5 of the question and answers. Thank you as always for joining us today. We're really excited. Today's topic is one of my personal favorites, breathing and sleep. So I'm grateful you're all here today, and I do want to just check in. How have you been, Suze? How have you been going with your work so far of giving yourself some time out every day?
Yeah, good. I have been trying to focus on, just giving myself a little bit of time where I use breathing as my time out. So it feels very appropriate to bring up. I just spend a bit of time doing some diaphragmatic breathing on my bed. So definitely. What about yourself? How are you going?
It wasn't ideal. I did have my birthday last week, so thank you for the birthday wishes from our Facebook community. So I probably wasn't as diligent over my birthday weekend. I still got some training in. My wife and I went down to Hobart for the weekend, and that was very nice. But I still did believe it or not, I did hit the gym in the hotel. Mm-hmm. One of my members told me that I was crazy. I was on holidays, but it's something I do like doing.
I always do that. My husband never understands it, but yeah.
Yeah. So fortunately, my wife actually joined me. So she was doing her exercise in the gym as I was. So it was something we did together. So I was quite happy with that. Before we dive into the topic today, I actually want to shout out to a few of our members and a few of our participants who are doing really well with the 12-week challenge. So thank you for those who've shared their results with us. It always, as I said, makes it much more encouraging for us to hear that the good results people are getting. I want to say a big shout out to one of our members over at Bondi who discussed with me at the start about having a more anti-inflammatory diet, and she's made some changes to her diet and she's noticed the immediate difference to her. She has some chronic pain issues, some inflammatory issues, and since she's made the change in her diet over the last few weeks, it's made a dramatic difference to her pain levels and she's feeling much happier. So I thought that was a really good really good win.
That's very good to hear.
What about you, Suze? Got any ones that you've seen? Yeah.
You know what? I'm inspired by our push-up people at both clinics. We've got a member at DY, Michelle, who's doing really great things. She's moved, her goal was to do a push-up on the floor, on her toes, and she's moved from the box, so an incline push-up, down to on her knees on the floor, and she's now toes and just working on that depth. So well done, Michelle. That's awesome. And then here at Gordon, Charlie is progressing really nicely towards his push-up goal. So it's I love push-ups. Yeah. Almost as much as calf raises.
Well, they're secondary calf raises. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Well, it's really good to hear the changes that people are making. So congratulations to all those out here who are following along and making the positive differences to their health and to their life with this 12-week health focus.
And feel free to make a comment, leave us a comment on the feed here so that we can obviously acknowledge it as well. We really love hearing all of the changes that you're making.
We definitely want to give our shout outs. We want to give the shout outs to people who are doing well with it. So as I said at the top, the topic for today is breathing and sleep. So we're going to start with breathing. I think personally this is the easiest change that people can make. Next to water and breathing are my two ones that I think if people just made a slight change to it, it's going to make a big difference. So I hope your water drinking has been going well. But now focusing on breath. Now, when I think about breath, most people think about it just happens automatically, but I actually think a lot about the conscious breath. Like, what are we consciously doing with our breath to draw more oxygen into our body? And when we look through history, breathing has been a part of a lot of cultures for thousands of years as part of their health routine, whether it be meditation or yoga or things like that. It tends to be a lot of the Eastern philosophies and Eastern cultures that really do focus a lot on breath. But the science is there now. The interesting part is how the science has caught up to what people have been doing for thousands of years.
Definitely. The mindfulness movements that involve, conscious effort regarding breathing and breathing techniques have been shown to create some really positive changes in the brain, which is fantastic. Improvements in memory and mood especially. So it's great.
Excellent. So when I think about breathing, most people, and I learned this at quite a young age. I did a bit of singing and performing when I was a younger lad, and we learned about diaphragm breathing. So I learned that when I was about 9 or 10 years of age, and it's something I'm surprised that so many people aren't aware of. And as I said, just because I was exposed to it at a really young age, but it can be a real game changer for people. Now, what do I mean by diaphragm breathing? At the base of your lungs, you've got a big dome-shaped muscle, the diaphragm muscle. And what that does is it draws the lungs downwards. So most people, when you ask them to take a deep breath, they go, and they breathe up into their chest and shoulders.
Yeah.
It's quite a natural inclination.
Breathing.
Yeah, but what it does is that actually creates more tension in your system. And the way I like to think about our lungs, they're shaped like a pyramid. The most amount of room is at the bottom. That's where most of the oxygen transference takes place. So if we can breathe deeper into our lungs, we actually pull the bottom half down, we actually get a deeper breath. As I said, I learned this when I was young, because singers, they want to breathe deep into their diaphragm. They want to relax their shoulders down so they can have a more powerful breath when they're singing. But what that does, you don't just have to worry about it for singing, it's about daily life. The more efficient your breathing is, the more oxygen that's traveling through your system, the less pressure on your heart, the less pressure on your lungs, but also all the muscles around your neck and shoulders as well.
Definitely.
So I'll get you to follow along at home with us. I'll get you to do a little experiment for me. I get all my clients to do this. Slouch over as far as you can, feel comfortable. Sorry, it's not a great view in the camera here, but you slouch over. Sorry for the Facebook people, I know I'm short. Try and take a deep breath in this position. How do you feel with that, Suze?
I feel like I can only half feel my lungs.
You can't do it because your lungs are being compressed. Now sit up tall, square your shoulders. Now take a deep breath. You'll be able to breathe much better in that position. Now what we want to do is we want to breathe down into our diaphragm though. And what this does is when our body breathes down into our diaphragm, it feels it's in a state of calm. It's safe, it's secure versus a state of stress.
Rest and digest.
Rest and digest versus fight, flight. So I find it funny when people, they say, oh, just, you're all tense, take a deep breath. And people go, don't feel any better. They've actually taken a breath that's encouraged that fight, flight response, that's encouraged that stress response. So what happens is if you hold your breath or you take deep breaths in, it's actually raising your blood pressure, it's raising your heart rate. It has an effect on those stress hormones, which is not good. We want to slow the breathing rate down, make it comfortable, make it relaxed. So what you're doing, and it's a bit hard to see, I'll try and get up a little higher, but what you want to do is you put your hand on your belly, one hand on your belly, and one hand up on the chest. Sorry for the Facebook folks if you can't see my lower hand here, the camera's a bit higher today. What you want to do is you don't want the breath coming in through the upper hand, like you don't want the upper hand to move at all while you're taking the breath. You just want all the movement through the lower hand. So I'll just stand up in just a second. So you want all the movement just through the lower hand. So it's you can see my lower hand moving versus my upper hand. That seems like it should be easy to do, but for a lot of people, if you've never done this before, it's quite challenging. So what I'd recommend is what Susie was saying, what she does earlier, which is do it in bed. So lying in bed, put one hand on the tummy, one hand on the chest, and really slow breathing and making sure it's through your nose as well. Now, you shouldn't be out of breath when doing this as well.
I was just going to say, one of the things with breathing techniques I find is that people get quite anxious. If you're not used to this type of breathing and it's difficult for you to coordinate, just make sure that you're continuing to get air in. So still focus on the technique, but don't be too hard on yourself to do consecutive repetitions of that style of breathing if you can't get it initially, because it will make you a little bit more anxious if you're not able to get that air in as effectively.
So nice, steady breathing. It should be steady in and out. I have done a meditation course before, and I remember one of the instructors saying that if you imagine you had a bit of string on the end of your nose, you wouldn't want it blowing backwards and forwards. It'd just be nice and still. The breath should slowly come in, slowly come out, but just nice and easily. It should feel really easy and comfortable. So that's one of the main things I would recommend from a breathing perspective, is practice that when you are at home, something comfortable like in bed, but also conscious of it while you're doing exercise. So when it comes to exercise, for you to exercise efficiently, you want that oxygen coming through nice and steadily. You don't want yourself short of breath, so it's nice, steady breathing. Now, for me personally, trying to do diaphragm breathing if I'm out walking or running, I find quite difficult. I can maybe do it. I find it much easier, say, on a bike. I can exercise bike and focus on it, but particularly when I'm doing strength work. And I think that's a really important aspect, because when you're breathing down into the diaphragm, you tend to engage more of your core muscles as well. You tend to get that engagement more through that area. Would you?
When it comes to exercise, I think it's important to differentiate, and I personally prefer to use the breathing in the rest breaks, because I find that when you're actually exercising, you want to make sure that it is obviously a form of stress, healthy stress, and so it is natural to recruit a little bit more of the chest and the upper neck muscles as you are exercising. But as much control as you can have over that without, again, making yourself anxious is important.
So when we talked about strength exercises last week, I tend to, and I don't know about you, Suze, I tend to go a breath in and out with each movement. So say I'm doing a push movement, it's a, and then in,
Yep.
And that slows the movement down, which we talked a lot about last week, of
Yeah.
slowing the movement down, having it nice and controlled, but your breath going with the movement. So
they always say that the hardest part of your effort should be where you're breathing out.
Yep.
So if you can coordinate that, but the main thing is don't stop.
Yeah.
don't hold your
breathing.
breath.
Don't hold your breath. Yeah. That makes the biggest difference, particularly for those with high blood pressure. It's one of the things, and I find it particularly so with strength exercises. People tend to hold, while they're doing something hard, something challenging, versus, as Susie said, breathing out while you're doing the hardest part of the exercise.
And maybe if, there are a lot of schools of thought that say if you are needing to hold your breath on the hardest part of the exercise, that it might be indicating to you that you've got some weaknesses of, say, the core muscles, or that the level of the exercise might be a little bit beyond your abilities. So there are some great health and fitness gurus out there that do recommend keeping the exercise at a level where you can still maintain control of your breathing.
Yep, agree. And I'd say that applies for all our participants out there, that we want to do exercise at a smart level. The amount that you do should be appropriate for you, that it challenges you enough, that it's causing your body to change and gain fitness and gain strength and gain mobility, but it shouldn't be pushing yourself right to the limit. It's just the slow, steady. And particularly, I know it's a 12-week program that we're doing, and so you feel like, I want to get as much done in this 12 weeks as possible, but it's really about that lifestyle change. It's really about things that you can continue to do beyond this 12 weeks, so you can keep on going with it. So great. Now, I've already had a couple of comments and questions come through. Please keep them coming. We love to hear that. Thanks so much. It's always great to hear. So if you have any questions about breathing, any different thoughts on it, please pop that in the question box below.
Just a quick shout out then. So thanks to Nicola, who wrote a comment that she's loving the discipline of the weekly sessions and the topics. It's making a huge difference to how she thinks about exercise and how often she gets to do it. So well done, Nicola. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We're going to move on to sleep now, and Susie did joke that she is not an expert on sleep. Susie has a young daughter who apparently is allergic to sleep. I have had the fortune of having children that do sleep. I am very, very grateful for that. But we did joke that this is something I'll try and take on a bit. I think the interesting part to start with is how much the ideal amount of sleep is. And there are different research and different opinions on this. But for the majority that I have read, 8 hours is still the recommended guidelines, and there are studies to show from a hormonal perspective, from a recovery perspective, from a mental health and well-being perspective, from memory and cognition, 8 hours is the standard. Now, personally, I tend to probably go 7.5, probably is my ideal, whereas my wife tends to be more 9. My wife likes her sleep. Now, Susie, on the other hand, can operate on, let's just say, a little bit less than that. Limited sleep. And it's amazing what she can do and achieve on that limited sleep, where other people would probably be going crazy.
Just to clarify, that's not by choice.
Yes, exactly right. Not that she wants to have limited sleep, just out of her control with a young child. Now, when we look at sleep, and I think that the most important to think about is the quality of the sleep. I think a lot of people measure how much sleep they get, but they're not actually looking at the quality of that sleep. In particular, when they're getting to sleep and when they're waking up. If you're reading through the chapter that we've got on this, there are the different phases of sleep. And the first part of sleep is your deeper phase. This is something I didn't realize until I started doing a bit more research in it. I quite enjoyed Dr. Michael Mosley's book on sleep. I found that really helpful. But that first initial stage is where we go into our deep sleep. And that's where we have a lot of the clearing and the memory formation happen in that first part of deep sleep. It's really important for our mental health and well-being and our memory to get that deep sleep. Now, deep sleep generally occurs before midnight. So I know there's probably a few night owls out there not being happy with me, but you need to get as much sleep before midnight to have really good quality sleep. Then from there, we tend to go into the REM sleep.
Rapid eye movements.
Yep, so rapid eye movements, that's when we dream. And that's more the imagination, creative work. I mean, a lot of creativity actually can happen in sleep. I find it fascinating reading about people coming up with all kinds of weird and wonderful solutions and things like that as they wake up. They've come up with an idea overnight because their brain is actually percolating away there in the background. So let's talk about what you want to do to get good quality sleep. And we're going to start first and foremost with exercise. Obviously, that's our passion. That's what Susan and I focus on most. But there's amazing research out there showing the effects of exercise on sleep. So take it away, Susan.
Yeah, I think before we even get to that point, it's important to look at the relationship as being both ways when it comes to sleep and exercise, in that exercise can improve sleep. However, poor sleep is going to affect physical activity levels throughout the day. And so, working through that balance, and it's almost ironic because if you are in that phase of having poor sleep, you're going to be less likely to be physically active. Most of the studies out there that have been done on sleep, particularly some of the bigger ones in the US where they've had a national survey of sleep patterns, have always consistently shown that people who sleep better in terms of hours and quality of sleep, regular exercises. So exercise has a huge role. There was also a great recent systematic review that looked at all of the data from between 2012 and 2017, and it said regardless of the type of exercise that you're doing, that especially in middle-aged and older adults, that exercise promotes increased sleep quality and duration. So
better and longer. They sleep better and longer. If
and
they're doing exercise.
It's also important. It reduces the time it takes you to get to sleep, and then the time it takes you to get back to sleep if you do wake up throughout the night.
I couldn't agree more. And I know that very much personally as well. If I've had a couple of days where I haven't been as active through various reasons, I find my sleep quality definitely decreases for it, and it's very noticeable. So first things first, we're on track with our exercise. Hopefully you're exercising, doing some strength sessions twice a week, 2 to 3 times a week, some other aerobic sessions. Should be doing something every day though, something of exercise variety every day, and hopefully that is helping with your sleep. Now, what are some other good things and tips that people can do? That's what I want to kind of dive into now. My tips, as I said, these are in the ebook as well, so you can refer back to that later. And as I said, that ebook is a free download. So if you haven't downloaded already, please do so. Now, the first thing is getting into a good nightly routine. When you're going to bed, if you're sticking to a certain time, a regulated time, it's going to be much better than if you're going to bed at varying times. So one time you get into bed at 11 o'clock, the next night you get into bed at 9:30, the next one midnight, next one. It's much, much harder to regulate. Thank you for putting up the download link in there, Shani. I appreciate that for the ebook. There, if you're getting to bed at a regular time and then getting up at a regular time, that makes a big difference in terms of your sleep patterning. The other thing there's a few things I'm going to recommend. And we're going to talk about eating and nutrition a little bit later, particularly around the timing of your eating. You don't want to eat in the 3 hours leading up to going to bed. What happens is your body is then digesting food. One of the things that does when it digests food is actually raises your core temperature as well. And when you get warmer, like when you're eating food, it warms you up. Higher core temperature actually has a negative effect on sleep. So we want to make sure that you're not eating in the 3 hours before going to bed. It's just better for your body to digest.
It's interesting that you say that because I was going to actually mention, just quickly taking us back to exercise, that people often wonder whether or not it's good to exercise before you go to bed. And the jury's still out in terms of, what times you should sort of limit your exercise prior to bedtime. Most people naturally don't choose to exercise in the hour before they go to bed for obvious reasons. But the research is mixed, and the main thing that they say affects, the sleep quality is the increase in core temperature. So obviously, if you are someone who likes to exercise at the end of the day, and I sort of tend to bias more, exercise at the time of day that you're actually going to do it, rather than subscribing to a specific morning, afternoon, or nighttime. I think play to your strengths. But if you are that type of person, just be conscious of, some ways to try and decrease your core temperature a little bit before you do go to bed.
Cooling yourself down. And I know it does sound strange, but a cool shower, you think, all right, that'll really wake you up. But it actually does help. I have read that a cool shower, not cold, just to clarify, not cold, particularly at night when we come into winter.
I was just going to say it's good coming into winter.
But a cool shower will help cool you down. Then when you get into bed, a cooler temperature is slightly better to sleep in terms of like if we're hot, it's harder to get to sleep. So it makes sense exactly what Susie was saying about if you're exercising at night, getting warm, then you're not going to sleep as well. Yep.
I was going to say, can I throw a question to you? Because you had a good question from
Yeah.
Sandra.
Yep. Great.
So she still works full-time an afternoon shift. She finished her shift at midnight. Any tips on winding down and getting to sleep? I can empathise because going through uni, I worked in a bar and finished up quite late, and you get home from work and you're still quite buzzing. So it does, strategies.
Yes.
How to wind down.
So looking at that, shift work is quite interesting. And I think in your case, Sandra, you have to kind of reset your body clock that you will be going to bed a bit later. So obviously getting up later. But looking at when you're eating, again, you don't want to, one of the challenges with work is if you get home and then you're hungry and you eat, then it's going to take longer to get to sleep. Winding down. There are certain things that I recommend to do to wind down. Number one is making sure you're doing some form to physically relax your body. I think this is probably the thing that's most underestimated or most overlooked, but doing some gentle stretching. So as Suze was saying, you don't want to do exercise that raise your core temperature, but just some gentle stretching. I quite like using a massage ball or a massage roll or a massage machine even, doing something that you can relax you if you've been on your feet at work, massaging your legs, massaging your feet, something that, and then doing some gentle stretching, doing some easy breathing work, as Suze was talking about, just to get you to slow down.
It's interesting that you say that because of the research when it comes to exercise at night time, the recommendations for the types of exercise that are best tolerated are exercises like, for example, yoga, where you're doing a lot of breath work, a lot of sustained stretches and postures. So again, not going to raise your core temperature, depending on the type, not Bikram yoga, probably.
No, you're not doing. But it's nice and relaxing, like things that will help to relax you. The other things that are really helpful winding down, I find, like going away from screens. So you don't want to be watching TV, on your phone, on the computer, anything like that, because that's actually quite stimulating for your brain. Now, I know that a lot of people out there will probably say, but I fall asleep in front of the TV. Yeah, but it's not great quality sleep because your brain waves are still being stimulated. Your brain isn't able to settle down into those relaxing phases of the sleep. So it goes to the quality of the sleep as well.
It's interesting that you say that. There are actually a few sporting teams that take sleep so seriously that if they're staying in a hotel, they take masking tape to put over even the little light that's indicating the TV is on, so that they completely block out any artificial light.
Yep. So light regulation is a big one as well. So, I mean, I know my wife loves her face mask, because I tend to get up early in the morning and it may be a bit lighter and she wants to keep sleeping. So light regulation is really important. But then thinking about it, I'm still going with Sandra's one here, and then we'll get into more of a general one for the general population. As I said, cooling yourself down, making sure you're nice and cool as well. That helps you to get into a deeper sleep faster. So I hope some of those do help. It is tricky for shift workers, and reading in the book, it is just trying to get into the best routine that you can. I think that is the kind of the ideal. The other thing I will say is, if you're someone who struggles getting to sleep and getting up in the morning, I would say getting outside first thing in the morning is really critical. We've all got what we call our circadian rhythm. That's our internal body clock. And one of the challenges is we are under artificial light all day long. So we're inside an artificial light, and then we get home, and then we're under artificial light at home. When we get outside at sunrise and sunset, it helps our body clock to reset. So this is one of my top tips for beating jet lag as well.
And in terms of getting up first thing in the morning, there is also some good research to show that if you get out on the ground, and provided you can tolerate it and you're not in a snowy situation, having your feet bare is actually really good for grounding as well, which helps with that whole body. So getting the body into that kind of rhythm with the daily cycle. So if I know a lot of people are like, but I really struggle to get up and get going in the morning, I understand. All you need to do is literally just go outside. You don't necessarily, some people are like, I don't want to exercise in the morning. I love to exercise in the morning. That's my favourite time of day to exercise. I love to get out. I'm fortunate enough to live down by the water's edge in Sydney. I live down around the bay in Rozelle. And so I get out down by the water in the morning, and it has a huge positive effect on me, on my mental health and well-being, my energy levels. And there will be times, and Susie already raised this, that there'll be days when you're tired and you think, how do I know when to exercise or not when I'm tired?
So what I do is I always give myself the 5 to 10 minute rule. If I get out and I go to exercise, and sometimes I may not have got a great night's sleep the night before, and I start to do, might be a gentle jog for me or go for a walk, but after 5 to 10 minutes, I still don't feel great, I call it a day. But it's a hack for me to get going in the morning, and I tell myself I'll just do 5 to 10 minutes. And if I don't feel good, I'll stop. Because sometimes you are tired and you think, oh, should I even get out and exercise? But it is generally going to do you good in, I'd say, 90% of the time.
Can I take it that step further? I think technology is really wonderful to use to your advantage when it comes to knowing whether or not your body's rested enough to exercise. There are lots of trackable devices that you can wear these days, and in particular, if you can find, something that measures what's called your heart rate variability. That's a really good indicator of your readiness to exercise, how well rested your body is, and whether or not you should be exercising, and also the type of session. So finding that, if you have a low heart rate variability, that you might want to do a gentler session rather than a more intense session.
Yep, that's a great. So heart rate variability you'll find I know it's on my Apple Watch now, but I find getting that balance right, just listen to your body as well. So if you don't have something, I do agree. If you've got something, fantastic, use it.
Just giving the options.
Yeah, it's good. But if people don't have it, just really listen to how your body feels after 5 to 10 minutes. Because so many times you'll feel a bit sluggish to get started for the day. But once you get up and get going, the other one I would recommend is obviously having water first thing in the morning. Having a good drink of water first thing in the morning as you're getting out to exercise really does wake you up. Now, if you're waking up, you're getting that exercise early in the day, and if you can, you're getting outside at sunset. Now, at sunset, I wouldn't recommend doing a lot of heavy exercise. I think that's the time of the day that you want to let your body know it's time to wind down. So going for a gentle walk, doing some stretching, just enjoying being outside. I think it's a really calming time if you've had a really busy day. The mental benefit of being outside, sunset, it winds your body down for the day. I think that can be really beneficial as well. So that's another one that you can use. And obviously it's hard if you are working or you've got commitments around that time, but even just a few minutes of getting outside, taking a moment, take a few breaths, just letting the body relax, letting the body know, okay, it's time to wind down for the day. I think that can be really beneficial. And good. Any other things that you want to bring up, Suze? I've got a couple more points here as I bring across my notes.
No, I think I'm good. I'm going to leave it to you.
Yep, great. What I'll do is a couple of common questions I get is, what about napping? Is napping good or not? I think it is a personal thing. Some people, it can really be beneficial for them to have what is commonly called a nana nap.
I was going to say, what do you differentiate? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, so what I'm going to recommend is, what I have read is that it's okay to have a nap as long as it's less than 30 minutes. So ideally 15 to 20 minutes. And you want to have it during the middle of your day. So it's generally around 7 to 8 hours after waking. You don't want to have it later than that in the day. So say you're getting up at 8, let's say you're getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, you'd be wanting to have it around 1 o'clock. Okay, 1 to 2 o'clock. If you're having it later than that in the day, then it's going to affect your sleep at night. And that's me personally. Like if I have a nap during the day, unless I'm really, really exhausted, it's not good for me. It'll knock me and I won't be able to sleep that night and I'll end up being worse for it. I'd prefer to try and push on through the day and then just have a better night's sleep that night. However, if it's really exhausted. But it can be good for some people. I know a lot of cultures, particularly a lot of the European cultures, do have that siesta during the middle of the day. And it's quite beneficial. But they've trained themselves to do it. They've kind of trained their body. That's one of the other things I have heard with napping is you can't be sporadic with it. You can't do it one day and then not do it another, and do it another day and not do it the other, because it'll throw your sleep rhythm out. But if you're consistent with it each day and your body can adjust to it, I think it can be beneficial. The other thing is what people do if they wake up. So if you are one that gets to sleep okay, but then in the middle of the night you wake up and you can't get yourself back to sleep. Number one rule is don't stress. Don't get anxious, because often the anxiety of not being able to sleep is then driving you not to sleep. Most people will fall back to sleep within 10 to 15 minutes. It's actually very natural. It's part of our biological awareness. And there's theories around this, but going back a few hundred years, we lived in more tribal cultures where we had to, fend for ourselves at night, and often we could get attacked. We were vulnerable at night. So it was natural for your body to be in a lighter state and be able to alert, wake up, oh, no, we're still safe, we're good, go back to sleep again. So we don't need to stress about waking. It's quite normal to do if you're waking at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., as long as you allow yourself to get back to sleep. Now, what happens if you can't? The recommendation that I have been given, and again, this is one I find quite helpful, is I read a book that I've already read before. So I pick up a book that it's a fiction book, something easy, and I just read and I just flick until my mind's like, all right, I'm starting to get sleepy again, go back to sleep. You don't want to jump on TV, you don't want to jump on technology, you don't want to try and do any like, oh, I've got all these jobs to do, why don't I get started doing those jobs that no, don't do that. Keep it quite relaxing. You can do some stretching, do some breathing work, but generally you should fall asleep back to within 20 minutes. If you haven't fallen asleep in 20 minutes, then say get up, read a book, do some gentle stretching, do some things to unwind you.
I know that for myself, speaking personally, I do have those nights where it's not just Sophia that wakes me up, where I do wake up thinking about the things that I have to do tomorrow. And I find if I don't physically write them down next to me, so I have a pen and paper next to my bedside, if I don't physically write it down, then I'm actually anxious and I find it really hard to get back to sleep because I'm thinking, I hope I remember these things in the morning. So if you're the type of person who does process things and you're a little bit anxious about, remembering things that you need to do the next day and you're waking up doing that, then having a pen and paper to write it down definitely calms you down, and then you can go back to sleep much easier. Well, I find that personally anyway.
Agree. Something I thank you for bringing that up, because that was something I did mean to mention as well. And I often find like it seems like you've got all this information in your head, and then you got to write down, and it's only just like a few sentences. You're like, oh, that's it. But it's because I find at night you kind of roll around. Your thoughts just keep rolling and rolling around.
Ruminate a bit.
But once you write them down, you're kind of like, all right, well, I'm done. Yeah, great point, Suze. Another one is allowing for more time during the seasons as well to change. So in winter, it's natural for us to sleep more.
Yes.
The days are shorter and the nights are longer, so it's natural for us to sleep a little bit longer during winter.
Hibernate like the bears.
Yeah, we go into hibernation. But you do want to make sure that you just give yourself a little bit more time during winter. And as I said, the cooler months, you sleep more during the cool months. You cuddle under the blanket, which does help you to sleep a bit better when you are a bit cooler. Lastly, I wanted to bring up alcohol. Now, it's one that I don't think gets enough attention, because a lot of people feel like, oh, I just have a drink before I go to bed. It helps wind me down. Alcohol can help you to get to sleep faster. That is true. However, it does affect the quality of your sleep. It does affect with how much because it dampens down your brain activity while your brain is actually trying to replenish itself and regenerate. So although alcohol can have an effect and help you get to sleep, it doesn't necessarily mean good quality sleep. So apologies out there. As I said, I don't want to sound like total teetotaler. I do enjoy a glass of wine, but drinking too much before going to bed will have a negative effect on it. So now we want to just open up to any more questions. We are going to wrap up now. We're a couple of minutes beyond. But yeah, if anyone does have any further questions, anything from the chat box there, Shani? We're all good there. So thank you all very much again for your participation. We're coming up to the halfway mark now, which is pretty exciting. And great to see, as I said, the changes that people are making. Please continue to let us know. Give us a shout out. That's wonderful. And next week we are moving to probably my all-time favourite topic. I know I say that every week. Every week's my favourite topic.
I was going to bring that up.
I'm going to be talking about balance, which is what got me started. This whole journey started for me. And now, interesting, next week, actually in 2 weeks' time, next week or 2 weeks, I'm just thinking, it's next week, is actually our 15th birthday at Active Seniors.
So we'll wear party hats.
So we will be wearing party hats. We will be celebrating to celebrate our 15th birthday next week, and very excited for that. So thank you all again for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful day. And as I said, please feel free to share with your friends and family. We'd love to help as many as possible. All the best.